dear Nadine Maenza, President of the IRF Secretariat. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. You just visited the Rojava, and you have been uh, joining the meetings in there as well, and you were very active with the ANEs as well. So firstly, why were you in Rojava, and between which dates did you stay there?
Yeah, so I went in, I think I came in October 11th, so I was there for that week. And I had been invited actually by the Future Syria Party to join them in an event. And it gave me also a wonderful opportunity to visit the region and see how people were recovering from these horrific airstrikes from Turkey, over 200 hitting, critical civilian infrastructure like water, electricity, hospitals, 48 schools. The fact that the world isn't paying any attention, it gave me an opportunity to go and see some of these sites and to see the consequence of Turkey's actions on civilians and how horrific that is.
Thank you, Nadina. Secondly, also about the case that you mentioned, the airstrikes of Turkey.
Mhm.
Because of you mentioned, I would like to continue with that one before I ask the second question. Why do you think Turkey is making these airstrikes? Do you think they are trying to move the civilians and they targeting the civilians? We can clearly see that it's against international law as well as it's a war crime. So
Mhm.
why still the airspace is not closed for Turkey for these attacks? Very shortly.
It makes absolute no sense that the US and the international community look away. For the United States, the goals in Syria are the enduring defeat of ISIS, increased humanitarian support and stability, a ceasefire to all conflicts. And here we have Turkey violating all of the US goals. And these actions are actually helping ISIS, giving them the chaos they need to be able to reform and to be a force against not just Syria but the West. Um, and the fact that civilians have been killed, children, women, over 44 people, and hardly any talk about this internationally. So Turkey's made it very clear that they don't want the people of Northeast Syria to be able to build a government and to have a society the way that they do. And what's disturbing about this is Turkey, of course, Erdogan just announced that Hamas is not a terrorist, but yet says all of the people in Northeast Syria are terrorists. So when they count how many terrorists they've killed, they include the women and children. This is really troubling and is a war crime to be able to target civilians, target civilian infrastructure, water, schools, hospitals. Um, Erdogan complains about this in Gaza, yet he does the same thing in Northeast Syria and gets a complete pass from the international community.
Thank you. So the secondly, I would like to continue with your Rojava visit. So where did you go? Who did you meet with there? And what did you hear from the local officials? And what were the your observations?
So I was able to meet with a lot of people. Of course, some of the leaders. I was able to meet with Badrangia Kurd in the Foreign Office, with General Mazloum, as well as quite a few other officials and individuals that are living through the lack of water and electricity and what's that like, to try to get enough gas to run the generator for a few hours if you're fortunate enough to have one. With winter coming, what that's going to mean. I was able to go to Raqqa, just always a delight to be with the people of Raqqa. I was able to join in an event there. I was able to see Abu Ammar Idlibi and talk about the situation in Idlib. So I would have loved to have gone to Kobani and some of the other cities I didn't get to this time that hopefully another time I can join, that are also really close to my heart. But I was able to, first of all, understand that the people of Northeast Syria aren't ready to leave. They want to stay and continue to build this really remarkable democracy that actually overrepresents minorities, where every ethnicity, religion, and of course half the leaders are women, all are a part of governing themselves. And this is a model for a non-sovereign place we could use all over the world where there's instability. How do we bring people together to build a government to take care of themselves? And that's what the people of Northeast Syria have done. There's so much we can learn from them. And yet we look away because everyone's afraid of Turkey being mad at them. And so they appease Turkey, they let Turkey do whatever they want. And it's going to cost the US and the international community if this continues. And that's why it's time to say no more. That Erdogan's not allowed to continue these illegal airstrikes.
Thank you. You mentioned that you speak to civilians as well. You had opportunity to
Mhm.
meet with the people who has been bombarded by Turkey, and there was hospitals, villages,
Mm.
electricity supply stations has been bombarded, and then you published a video of one of the crime scene as well.
Mhm.
So, what are the civilians are talking about? What is their message to the people in Europe as well as in USA? What they are seeking, what is the main point of them?
They just want safety. These are not PKK members that are plotting to destroy Turkey. That is a false narrative Turkey is using as an excuse to attack Northeast Syria. And so the people feel very betrayed by the international community that they're just living their lives trying to make a society that excludes extremism, a place where everyone has a seat at the table, regardless of who you are, where you come from, and they're doing exactly what the US and the international community wanted them to do. See, what happens is so often, military support is given to a society, and what they do is they beat whoever is the opponent, and then it just becomes chaos afterwards. But they actually did what all of our military partners should do, which is build governance to hold the ground we won during the battle against ISIS, so we don't have to fight for it again. So all this talk of stopping forever wars in Europe and the United States, this is how to do it. It's to empower people to be able to set up their own government, govern themselves, protect human rights, protect religious minorities, protect all ethnicities and religions. Everybody is equal in the society. Everyone has the same human dignity. This is a model for how to bring peace and stability to chaotic areas. They've done it, and yet we don't give them the recognition that they deserve, and instead are pretending nothing's happening in Northeast Syria to these people as we look away as Turkey continues to bomb. Just yesterday, Erdogan said he was coming in again. He's going to continue to bomb. Claims all the people in Northeast Syria are terrorists, and should be unacceptable. And the people feel betrayed. They're troubled by the lack of attention.
Thank you. So you also spoke to many authorities in there as well. So what is the priority and what is the call of the expectations of the authorities there very shortly?
Yeah, so people need international support now to recover from these strikes. It's hard to fix an electrical plant, a water plant, schools. Right now, schools aren't being run in Northeast Syria. The children don't have a right to an education. It's been taken from them by Erdogan because he's destroyed 44 schools. It's hard to even process that that is allowed by the international community. In fact, I think just today, Human Rights Watch came out with an article, a report about these war crimes, and they even call them out as war crimes, targeting civilian infrastructure. So more and more are starting to document that this is happening, this is illegal, and this is wrong. And yet Turkey is claiming they're going to come in again. And the same day that Erdogan says Hamas is not a terrorist organization, although they committed these horrific atrocities against civilians, and at the same time says the people in Northeast Syria are terrorists. So I think it's time to stop letting Erdogan decide who is a terrorist, because clearly he uses that term just to benefit himself. And this is a land grab. He wants the land in Northeast Syria. He's made it clear he wants this whole belt. And another really important thing to understand about this belt is the belt he says he's going to take, safe zone, terrorist belt, whatever he calls it, is almost all the religious minorities in Northeast Syria. So it literally will be the end of Yazidi villages and some of the oldest Christian communities in the world.
Just to underline it very shortly, very briefly, what do you think Turkey aims with these attacks? What's their point? What's their aim?
Well, I think they want people to leave so they can come in and take the land. And we know when Turkey has come in and occupied the areas in northeast Syria, like Afrin, Serikani, Razaline. What they've done is they've basically almost turned it into the ISIS caliphate. The kind of crimes we see against religious minorities, against women of all ethnicities and religions, of really the minority ethnicities and religions, are horrific. United Nations every March does a report on Syria that lists all these horrific crimes being committed by the Islamist militias that are backed by Turkey in these areas. So they take these areas that have religious freedom, have gender equality, where people are working to make a future, and they turn them into these Islamist-run gangsters where attacks against women, rapes, murder, disappearances are normal, where Christian converts have been tried, arrested for apostasy, for converting decades before, just all these horrific crimes against these civilians. And yet they want to do that again. And the international community needs to draw a line and say no.
Exactly, you came to a very good point that I would like to ask you about the international community and as well as the international powers. They are still do not have any action against these war crimes that we're talking about. Why are the international powers are still silent in the face of this? And what should they do about it? What is your suggestion? What is your call to international powers?
Well, I think that part of the problem is Turkey sits geographically in an important place. And with the Ukraine war has been a very important intermediate between Russia. So people have been afraid of angering Turkey. And what we've seen though with Turkey is when Turkey's appeased, when they let Turkey do whatever they want, like here in Northeast Syria, the next time the U.S. comes to Turkey to negotiate for something, it's not like Turkey's thankful. Like they gave away Northeast Syria, and they sit at a table to negotiate, and Turkey is wanting even more from them. So to somehow think this actually helps the U.S. relationship with Turkey is clearly not the case. Turkey's going to keep wanting more and more and more and more. And at some point, the international community needs to actually say, well, this is against the law. This is against international law to continue to let you do this. Because if they don't draw a line at this point, they're going to have to draw a line at some point. It might even be harder next time when, say, Turkey's going after Greece or someone else. So it's time for the U.S. to say this is the international law, for the international community, for Europe to say this is the law, and you can no longer cross this line. Now, we're not talking about military action against Turkey. There's lots of things the U.S. and the international community could do to punish Turkey, to hurt Turkey economically, all sorts of things. Basically, the U.S. and the international community, the European Union, all of them need to make the cost too high to Turkey to continue doing what they're doing right now. And that's
Thank
the only
you.
way they're going to stop.
Thank you. It's very important that we have discussed with you before our interview as well the situation in Palestine and
Mhm.
Israel. So, as you know, the Turkish minister Erdogan has uh, clearly and openly give a support to Hamas at the latest attacks. So, parallel to these attacks by Turkey, there are huge casualties in the
Yeah.
Israeli and Palestinian war as well. So Turkey carries out the same policies against the Kurds as Israel does. So which it condemns as well. So how should we read these contradictions? How would you going to evaluate that? Because this is a very tiny line to understand the Turkey's approach to the Kurds as well in Rojava.
Right. So Turkey's going to use whatever terms they want they want to benefit themselves. So Hamas, they say, isn't a terrorist. All the people in Northeast Syria are terrorists. Um, these crimes are horrific that are happening here, but they're not bad happening here. There's this inconsistency that is so hypocritical that it's actually drawing the world's attention. In fact, just yesterday, Senator Rick Scott from the state of Florida in the United States, he called for NATO to expel Turkey. So it's getting people's attention, and I think Erdogan's gone a little bit too far this time. He's clearly feeling very confident that the international community needs him and he can do whatever he wants. And like I said before, if we don't draw a line, if the U.S. and the European Union and all of Europe, the UK do not draw a line for him, he's going to keep crossing that line until he does something that maybe they care about. Part of the problem too, I think, is people don't understand Northeast Syria. They don't understand how special it is, what they've done, and how this is a place of stability. It blocks the Iranian land bridge from coming from Iran all the way over to Israel and Lebanon. Having this one-third of Syria being run well, that could actually be a model for other parts of the world, that represents our values, I think now could be in a more important place for the US and the international community to have allies than maybe it was before this war in Israel. So I'm hoping that this helps people to understand how important they are. And my heart breaks for all the crimes being committed against civilians in both Israel, of course, and here in Northeast Syria, and the human dignity of everyone is the same. And that's something that also is important to acknowledge, which is not what obviously Erdogan believes.
Another important issue is about the American public opinion. So, how are the events in Rojava discussed in the American public opinion, or are they have any discussion about it? Is it on the agenda, or do you think there is enough reaction from the American Republic on public opinion?
There's very little knowledge of who Northeast Syria is. To be honest, in the United States, I've been in congressional offices. I've been in a Senate office where the foreign affairs staff didn't even know there was an autonomous region in Northeast Syria. So Turkey spends a lot of money, millions of dollars a year on lobbyists. And they have all sorts of think tanks that are funded in Washington that just don't say anything about anything. I mean, I've literally been at events on Syria where the Northeast isn't even mentioned. I've been to events talking about Northeast Syria where Turkey is barely mentioned. So there's a lot of censorship or self-censorship in Washington. A lot of people don't understand what the people of Northeast Syria have done. And unfortunately, the only time it seems to get a lot of attention is when there's an invasion, and it's kind of too late at that point in time. So a lot of education needs to be done. I've certainly done my best. I know there are others working to educate the American public about this is how to stop a forever war. There's a lot of talk, a lot of frustration with the American public about we've been involved in wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and it seems to have caused more problems, not less. And so there's a sense that we need to bring our troops home. We need to stop getting involved in other people's conflicts. And I certainly understand that view and am frustrated like the rest of America. But like I said, what makes this project different is the people of Northeast Syria have done what all of our military partners should do, and they've built governance to hold the land so we don't have to come and fight for it again. So they actually show us how to stop a forever war. So staying here, providing them the support is such a small lift for the United States, and yet it provides such a huge gain for us to have our allies in this part of the world, in the epicenter really of the Middle East, to be able to have a footprint there, to be able to help them to be successful. You know, if Turkey stops these airstrikes, they have oil, they have some of the most fertile land in the Middle East. They could provide for themselves and be completely self-sufficient. So we're not talking about nation building. We don't need to nation build here. We just need to let them continue to build this government and show us what they can do, and maybe what other parts of the world could do if they were given the kind of support.
Thank you. I would like to just mention it and underline it. That's why I'm asking that question again. So why are the world powers that raise their voice against the casualties in the Israeli-Palestinian war, but they keeping silent against Turkey, who is committing war crimes in Rojava right now, even yesterday as well? What is the reason for this silence?
It's really a lack of leadership. The U.S., some of the other countries in the world are not willing to call a spade, and this goal of de-escalation rather than solving problems is actually leading to long-term problems. And so what's happening, I know in the U.S. and some of these other countries, is they're looking for short-term wins. So this administration and previous administrations were no different, unfortunately, looking for that short-term win. Like, we got an agreement with Turkey, so they announced it. Look, we're good at diplomacy. We're leading, but that short-term agreement led to long-term instability and chaos. We need to be looking for long-term peace and stability. And how do we get long-term peace and stability? And it's not by appeasing Turkey. It's actually by saying, this is our policy for this region. We want peace and stability for Northeast Syria because we know what that will mean. If it falls, it's going to be filled with Islamists and Iranian militias. The cost to the United States government, to the U.S. community, to the Middle East will be enormous. They have done the hard work. So the U.S. just needs to be there and be letting them continue to build their own project. We don't need to do it for them. That's what's so remarkable about what they've built, is they don't need us. They need us to let them continue. But Turkey once, first of all, he has a lot of problems with the Kurds in his own country. He removes them, the mayors, from office, arrests people for speaking Kurdish on the parliament floor. So he's got a Kurdish thing. But I think it's super important to understand too that while the Kurds started this project, it's a multi-ethnic, multi-religious organization government now is a majority Arab. They have 3 languages, Arabic, Kurdish, and Syriac, Christian language, a close dialect to what Jesus spoke. I mean, this is remarkable. I remember bringing people into Northeast Syria, and they're looking around like, signs are in Syriac. Every sign is also in Syriac. I'm like, yeah, but no one in the world uses Syriac as a language, but the people in Northeast Syria do, and yet no one even knows this. It's quite something. So impressive.
Thank you. So your efforts and your labor is very valuable for the Rojava people and the people that you mentioned as well. So very shortly, very briefly, after your visit to Rojava, will you have any activities and or any initiatives for the solidarity? Very shortly, please.
Yes, no, I just was at the State Department yesterday making a case for why they need to stand with people of Northeast Syria. I'm going to continue to meet with policymakers and make a case for why the U.S. needs to stand with the people of Northeast Syria.
Thank you. Lastly, you also received the Hevrin Halef Peace Prize in Rojava. What would you like to say about this? It's been an honor to watch you that you had this prize as well.
It was such an honor to be acknowledged in the same sentence as Hevrin Khalif. She was a visionary who was fighting for peace and believed that it was by bringing together Arabs, Christians, Syriac, Assyrians, and all the ethnicities and religions in Northeast Syria. She was against violence on both sides of the border. Her belief was, this is how we build peace. And so to be even included in the same sentence, let alone be given an award in her name with her mother and family and others she worked closely with, was such an honor that when they asked me to come, I couldn't say no, because I really wanted to honor her for the life that she lived and the visionary that she was, and how I want to continue the work she's doing. I want to encourage the people in Northeast Syria to continue the work she's doing, and ask the international community, take a look at who they are, what they've done, take a look at who Turkey is and what Turkey has done, and let's stand with the good guys that are actually on our side, are building a democracy, share our values.
President of the IRF Secretariat, Nadine Maenza, thanks for joining us, and thank you for your valuable comments.
Thanks so much for having me.